Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool. I've got a handful of small EDC type pliers. And these of course fit in the tool bag, can be used every day, but also they find their way into EDC kits or small tool kits, for emergencies or travel or something like that. Got some usual suspects in here, but let's go ahead and go from left to right. So I've got the Crescent tongue and groove little plier here. I've got the Irwin Vise-Grip in its smallest configuration with its curved jaw. I've got the tiny little Channellock tongue and groove, made in USA. I've got a Stahlwille here, made in Germany. Got a tiny little German Knipex. This is 100mm in the Cobra. Here's the 125 in the push-button Cobra. Here's the 100 in the Knipex plier wrench. Here's the 125 in the Knipex plier wrench. And then here is the snap-on. This one's a 44 ACF, tiny little slip joint, double slip joint plier. Because snap-on, this is a full-size plier here. This is the size that, you might carry in your tool bag, larger ones. Snap-on does make bigger ones, in the same form factor. You can see, that's just absolutely monstrous compared. Look at that. Look at the size difference. Pretty wild. But anyway, so let's take a look at what these do well, what they don't, which ones I would carry. So starting over here, actually, I'll grab this to get it out of the way first of all. This is kind of more what we used to call an ignition plier. There used to be ignition wrenches, little tiny wrenches. But look at how paper thin the side of this jaw or this blade is. It's tongue and groove. Has some limitations. If you happen to catch it in between, like that, it's not going to close. But if you apply much pressure, this will spread out. And that's one of the problems with some of the tongue and grooves. And it does not have much of a jaw. But super light. Absolutely the lightest one here, and made in the USA. The next one, very similar, is the Crescent here. It's got kind of a beefier jaw compared especially to that little Channellock. You can see a little more meat on this side of the blade. Again, standard tongue and groove. A little bit more reach, a little beefier handles. Here is the Irwin Vise-Grip. Now this Vise-Grip is more of a clamp than a plier. It's a little, if you've used these things trying to do plier stuff, it's a little bit tougher. It's better to just grab a hold of something and clamp down. I'll show you that in a moment. Here is the Stahlwille. It is very similar kind of in blade design to the Knipex, but actually not. And I'll show you that in a moment when I grab something. But the Stahlwille here is much like the Knipex alligator. They don't make a little tiny alligator, Knipex doesn't, but it uses that same kind of, this is a 4-position pivot. As you can see, that kind of half moon shape locks in to like a cylinder into that cutout. But simple design, very durable, nice and beefy as far as the jaws go, colorful. Next one, I'm going to jump out to the end and then do the Knipex. So this is the standard kind of slip joint plier design, but in a mini form factor. I love these things. I've had them forever. They're great. They've gone all over the place with me. Never let me down. But, there are some things that these can do that are better. So let's take a look at them. First two here are the Cobras. Cobras can be identified pretty quick by that kind of the cobra-shaped head maybe, and that trapezoid right there. That's a very special design. It's not an accident. Got the 100mm and the 125mm. This one uses a push button. The smaller ones, they had to redesign it. There wasn't room for a button, so basically you go to max opening and it slides. It's kind of a speed mechanism. You notice this has the teeth on both sides. This only has the teeth on one side, which allows it to release and slide. Trade-offs. But anyway, both are solid. The jaw on these can probably grab up to anything big enough that you can't really manipulate it with a tiny handle. So, they score highly there. Similar with the plier wrench. Plier wrench uses a camming mechanism here, the same sliding or the same push button, and it keeps the jaws parallel, so when you engage a fastener, you're actually squeezing it on, like in hexes, on two parallel sides. So incredibly strong, very good design. The longest plier here is 125 millimeters, just under 5 inches, and that's the same across these three. They're all about the same size, and then they get smaller from there. So let's go ahead and grab something. I'm going to use this little nut. It's about a 3/4 inch nut. The classic kind of just designed for it is the plier wrench. I mean, you can see how well that grabs. Just rock solid, as if it's designed for it, because it is. So I can go even one smaller here to really lock down on that. And then as you're cranking down, if you've got that extra space that I had in the first grip right there, as I release, I can rotate it. You see how that slides? So I can kind of get a ratcheting mechanism going. That's a benefit of these. Fairly narrow though, but that's okay. That's plenty strong, because remember, unless you do something weird with the handles, you're not going to be able to generate enough force to damage or break these with a human hand. You know, you'd injure your hand before you'd compromise that metal. Same thing here. It's a nice solid big grip. You know, allows you to hang on, to grab it, and then of course get that camming, which is fabulous. So both of those are winners. I'm going to jump to the Cobra here. Here's the small Cobra. The Cobra small, the small Cobra here does grab. If you look at that, it seats very well. This shape is not an accident. It's designed that way. That's why I skipped over this, because this doesn't work as well. I'll show you that. But that's rock solid, that lockup right there. So these are great. You need a little bit more. Go with those. Go with the 125s. Again, a very strong grip. It just drops right down. You cut out a little space here, right there. I mean, it is just near bomb-proof if you get that. And of course, it is, because the push on this upper handle will keep this engaged. And the harder you push, the tighter it grips the fastener. Nice, solid, big, beefy jaws. So let's take a look at this Stahlwille here. Now, remember I said that this was not an accident when you looked at these shapes here? Well, this is more rounded. That's just like ordinary. And if I grab this, try to figure out what the best is, you can see, you know, the way it's seating in there is barely. It's not really grabbing the faces, it's grabbing two corners. And I can keep trying to rotate it. Now it's grabbing two corners down here and a corner and an edge of a face up there. It's still pretty strong, but I can feel, you know, just that it's not as near as strong as those Knipex options, but a decent little plier. Come to something like this. This is more of a clamp. If I line this up, you know, and clamp down, if I can get it, you can see I'm starting to get to the point where this is going to spit it out. But if I can grab it, you know, something like that. Well, this is what this thing does. None of the other pliers can do that. I mean, it's self-contained at this point. It is grabbing it fairly tight. I can do a lot, but as you look, it is not near as snug in there, because this can rotate out of there. But it's a good design, and it works well as a clamp, and that's one of the reasons we often have these, is if you need to shut something off or hold two pieces of metal together, or, you know, whatever. These mini pliers, or mini clamps, called Vise-Grips, are great. Now when you come to the last two, well, here's the Crescent. The Crescent barely grabs it. I mean, you're not, you know, out in the woods, but you can see it from there. This is not holding this very tight. But I can manipulate it. I can't really get, I mean, I could exceed probably the grip of the plier by my hand on this small handle. In other words, I could probably break it free. because you've got more leverage and strength here than this is actually grabbing the fastener. So that's interesting, but thanks for playing. And then here's the little Channellock. You know, it's trying so hard. That's the grip right there. I can actually let go of it, but it is holding on right there with just that absolute minimalist of the corner. So this will pop off right away. Back when we had ignitions that required keys, have to tell the kids about those. You used to actually stick a key in and turn it instead of just jump in and push a button. Used to use small little fasteners on those, and that's where ignition stuff came from. But anyway, here are the EDC pliers. My choices, top choices, I really like these two. If I'm going to encounter something and I know it, that's kind of deliberate, I might go with something like this. You know, if it's, you know, to work on a car or something. But I always like these. I don't know. Hard to say no to those. But these are always the winners. Anyway, with that, Doc out.